This video will show you how to work with lists using C#. Navigate to week 8 and then download the starting project, which is the test course zip file. Extract the contents and open the solution. Ignore the message and open the form. You see that you have a form created for you. Double click the get scores and we're going to go ahead and add the code for our program. We're going to write a couple of methods. The first method is going to be called named read scores. And the method is going to take a list of integers named scoresList. What we're going to do is we're going to try to open the test course file and we're going to read the scores into our list. And then we're going to close the file. And if anything should go wrong, we're going to write a catch to handle that. So this is going to be our read scores, which is simply going to populate our scores list. This is going to work because the list is passed by reference. So wherever we called the function from, the list where it was sent from will be updated. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to write a method to display the scores. And that method is going to take the same list as a parameter. And in it, we're going to have a loop, a for each loop, which is going to go through our list and get every item on our list, store it into a variable score, and then add that variable to our list box. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to write a method to calculate the average named average, which also takes the same parameter, a list of integers. And in here, we're going to declare a couple of variables to calculate the total and the average. We're going to use a loop, just like we did earlier, the same for each loop basically, to calculate the total by adding every item on my list to the total variable. And the next step will be to calculate the average by dividing the total by however many items we have in our scores list. And the last step for this method is to return our average. And that is the end of our average method. Now the next step is to create another method which is going to figure out and count how many of our scores in our scores list were above the average. Again, we're going to declare a variable to count, to hold that value. And then we're going to use that same loop with an if in it that we used earlier. This time we're going to add an if. And if any of these scores, which is an item on our scores list, is bigger than my average, and the average is what I'm going to declare up here, right? The average is going to call we're going to call the average method here, which is going to send the scores list as an argument, and then the average, which we wrote earlier, is going to calculate the average, return it, and then this value is going to of average is going to be brought back to where the function was called, and the variable average is going to be equal to that value. And then later in the loop, if any score is bigger than that, we're just going to increase the value of num above, which starts at 0. And the last thing to do in this method is to return this value of num above, and that is the end of the above average method. Now we also need to do a similar thing to this for our below average, and the below average is going to be very similar to our above average, and it will look just like that. Right? It will be named below average. It will take a list. We're going to have a variable to count how many numbers are below. We're going to get the average using the average method as we did before, and then using the same loop, we're going to see if any of the scores are less than our average. Then we're going to count them, and at the end we're going to return the value of however many we have under the average. The last thing to do is to write our get scores button, and we're going to create a couple of variables, three variables to hold the average score, how many things were above the average and how many were below the average, how many scores. Then we're going to create a list to hold our scores, right, as so. And we're going to read the scores from the file using the method that we wrote earlier already. Then we're going to display the scores inside of the list box using the method that we already wrote earlier, display scores. And then we're going to display the average scores inside of the average label that we have created in the form. The next thing to do is to display the number of scores that were above the average using the above average label in our form. And last thing to do is to display the number of scores that were below the average by using the below average method that we already wrote to store that into a variable and then make the text of our below average label equal to that variable. So we're going to change that as well when we click the get score. The only thing to do is to check to see if our program works. And I'm going to click get scores, and there it is. The scores that we read from the file are listed in my list box, and the results are here.